Okay, hi, Jennifer. It's nice to see you in person. We've been communicating back and forth a bit. Welcome. This is Jennifer Kriatsoulis, and I'm Dvora Entin, and I'm joining you on behalf of Yesh, Tikva, which is an organization that focuses on Jewish infertility and for individuals and couples that are facing all different forms of medical or happenstance infertility. We are excited to connect with Jennifer because Jennifer has a very unique angle in terms of her expertise and kind of a one-off from the general, typical clinical professional who's working with those in infertility. But I looked at Jennifer's work and I read part of her book and I'm thinking, this speaks to me as a therapist and as somebody who's interacting so frequently with those that are dealing with infertility. So before we get into the kind of the question answer, Jennifer, tell us a little bit about your practice. Who are you? What do you do? What brings us to this conversation today?
Yes, well, thank you for bringing us to this conversation. I'm so grateful for the invitation to be here. So thank you, Deborah. I am the founder of Yoga for Eating Disorders. My background is one of eating disorder recovery myself. I've been on, my journey for over 20 years. I started practicing yoga in graduate school and found that to be a really healing modality for me, certainly in conjunction with the other therapeutic work that I was doing. But it brought me into connection with my body in new ways. I was someone who struggled with an exercise addiction, perfectionism, people pleasing, kind of all those classic ingredients that that so many of us can relate to. But this kind of helped to take the edge off of those things and shift them toward compassion and kindness and respect for myself.
Yeah.
I'll say later in life, after I had my daughters, I have two little girls. After the birth of my second daughter, I had a really severe relapse with the eating disorder. And before she was a year old, was hospitalized in treatment. And then after that, realized that I needed to get yoga back into my life because it had kind of disappeared, and studied to be a yoga therapist. And that was a 3-year program that put me on my path to doing the work that I'm doing now, which is supporting others in their eating disorder recoveries and their relationship with their bodies.
And you're also a clinical therapist as well, a psychologist. Is that correct?
I am not.
You're not.
I am not.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
My PhD is in literature.
I was going to say, I thought I saw a PhD in there somewhere.
Yes. So, so I am not. So I do not do the work of a therapist.
Okay.
My work is kind of supplemental.
Nice.
So what I like to say is, while my clients, they go to therapy and things get stirred up in therapy as they need to be, then yoga therapy is a space to say, okay, how can we cope with what's coming up in healthy ways?
Yes.
And how can we create hands-on embodied practices to help cope?
I love it.
So, yeah.
I love it. What brought me to this conversation was, what connected me to this conversation really very personally. First of all, I also started doing yoga just a number of years, not even a year ago, probably about 6-8 months ago.
That's wonderful.
Absolutely love it. It's the kind of thing that I picked up a number of years ago and was like, this is so not me. Like I need to be like running and I need to be like high sweat and like, my heart rate, and I'm like, yoga's so not me. And also I can't sit still. Right. So it's like very low energy. And then I said, I was finding myself as a therapist, and especially exposed to a lot of other people's traumas. And I found myself as a clinician thinking like, I need to find a space to be quiet. And I really was having a hard time finding quiet. And so that's what actually prompted me to go into the therapy, into yoga work, and to just give myself permission to be quiet with my own thoughts and feelings for an hour. And I would shut my phone and give myself that hour. And it was really hard in the beginning to be fully present, not only with my thoughts and feelings, but with my body as well. And all the challenges that being present with our body means. And one of the most things that I'm most grateful for in the yoga practice that I had learned from this woman who taught me yoga. There was no way I was going to a yoga studio. So I had to hire somebody privately just to teach me a few times so that I knew what I was doing and didn't feel that stupid. But she would say, thank yourself for what you brought to the mat today. Thank your body for what your body provided you today. That is exactly where the entranceway for me into this conversation really is. So to back it up, that is my own personal kind of interaction with yoga and continue to practice weekly, is that when I work with women who are dealing with infertility, women who have struggled to conceive or to stay pregnant, many of them begin to see their body as the other. It is not something that is integrated. And for those that do integrate it, very often I will hear how much they hate their body or how much they're angry at their body for failing. And it's really understandable, that connection to their body in a very dysfunctional way, because their body doesn't feel functional. This thing that is supposed to be natural and mother, you know, that mothering and that feminine side of them, which for many women is about parenting and becoming pregnant, is lost to them and is kind of continues to be disappearing off into the distance. And they take that extremely personally. I have had a woman who said to me when she found out that she would not be able to conceive, said to me, then maybe my husband should just go find another wife. Like, this is the whole reason that we are made in this world, is to conceive and have a child and a family. So while that might feel extreme, I think there's some level of every woman that I have worked with and that feels that sense of disconnection and struggle with their body. And so that's the conversation that I want to have with you today, in terms of, talk to me a little bit, either within the frame of eating disorders or just in general with yoga and connecting to our body. Talk to me a little bit about how you have created that bridge, that connection between the body and appreciating the body for what I bring to the mat today.
Yeah, well, thank you for all that you shared about, you know, your personal experience and, you know, your work with your clients. I think it's a big question. I think it's an important question. I think there's a lot of layers to it, you know, because what you're describing, you know, for women who perceive or experience their bodies as dysfunctional, right? There's so much grief there. There's so much anger. There's so much, you know, just a combination of really hard feelings. And I think having the space to be with those is so important, right? We can't pretend that grief's not there, right? And I'm sure that you are supporting your clients continuously in this area. I think what yoga offers us is an opportunity to say, hey, you can have grief, you can have anger, and you can still be in relationship with your body. Right? Because that grief and that anger and those other feelings and those beliefs around, you know, my body's broken, you know, that's which is so connected to self-worth, right? Like a right to be in a relationship, a right to even exist as a woman. I mean, this is such real stuff. I think that those beliefs and that narrative turns us away from our body, right? It's like the body becomes the enemy. It's the thing that is wrong and needs to be escaped. And I think when we come to a yoga practice, whether that, you know, that's done in a supportive environment, a safe environment, whether that's a class or a one-on-one or, you know, working with a yoga therapist like myself, there's an opportunity to start coming back towards self. And it doesn't have to be, you know, I go to yoga and I come home and I love myself fully.
Right.
It's like, I took 10 minutes, I listened to my breath. I noticed that I could sit up straight. Wow. Like, okay, I was in my body for 10 minutes, right? Like, we got to start small, and it's from the noticing, right? Because there's such a sense of lack. Well, let's notice what is happening, what is possible, right? Oh, you can take a breath in and lift your arms up. Let's just hold that for a moment. And can we find a little bit of gratitude for that?
So what you're saying to me is that the yoga practice and working with somebody who's trying to reconnect to the body that they have been given is about being fully present with what is and what is available to me in that 5 minutes. So talk to me about a little bit, if I were to do a yoga pose at home, can you give me a sense of what might be something what is my mantra? Like, what am I saying in my head that allows me to create that space and connection to my body that might be missing to me in other moments of my day?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I do this type of work with my clients, I'm always inviting them to find their own authentic language, right? Because there can be this tendency to say, believe I have to say something so ultra positive. But if you don't believe it, it doesn't wire in. So I always say, can we find something neutral? Can we start at neutral? Okay. Right? Because when we're in a place of dislike or hate, like, that language is such a drain on the system. It is such a drain on the nervous system. It's such a drain on the emotions. It's such a drain on the whole entire system, right? Can we at least find something neutral to start with? Like, maybe I am here now, right? I'm here now, or I'm okay in this moment, or, you know, if the word acceptance can come out and feel somewhat authentic, right? Something around acceptance, like I accept my body right now. If acceptance isn't the word, what is the word? But let's keep it toward neutral or positive and start there, right?
Do you find people looking towards words of strength? Is it something that you feel like people tend to like move in towards the strength-based stuff?
I think strength is fantastic. Yeah. So what does strength mean to you? What does it mean to you to have a strong body today? Right? And what's the language around that feels authentic to you? Does that make sense?
It totally does. And I think that if I think about it, so if I feel like my body is weak or failing at other aspects of my life, so my body cannot hold a pregnancy, or my body cannot conceive a pregnancy, my body has failed me, it feels weak, right? That failure is a state of weakness. So if I am focused in a few minutes, and I like the idea just for 5 minutes of the day, because 5 minutes is actually a really long time when I'm counting breaths.
Yes.
So like if for 5 minutes of my day, I choose a yoga pose that might challenge me, and it might feel even uncomfortable to me physically, my body, but I might say, but look, I'm focusing on the capacity of my muscles to hold me for those 5 breaths, for those 5 minutes.
Yes.
There is strength in that moment.
There's strength and there's capability, right? So we've moved out of the weakness and the lack into capability and being able to observe, what am I capable of in this moment?
Right.
Right. And it's so it becomes this like self-validating process. And that I think is so key to the long-term healing of what you're talking about, because we need to be able to validate ourselves. Right. Because we feel invalidated by the way that we perceive our body has wronged us, and all the social and cultural messages that reinforce that our body has wronged us. So getting in touch with a sense of capability and strength from inside, right? So there's something really powerful about, say you're, in a pose and you're breathing and you're tapping into this sense of capability.
Right? Do you feel that there's a part of that practice that also, do we tap into the negative space as well? Like, is there a part when you're dealing with somebody, let's say, who's active in their eating disorder or who has just had a failed cycle? What I'm wondering is if it might be so complex for somebody to even get into that space because they're so sad and they're so in grief. So how do you help them balance between but I'm really not happy right now and I really don't feel grateful for anything right now. I hate my body right now. What are some things that we can do for moments or for minutes in time when we're really actively in that state of grief?
Yeah. Well, I think when we're in that place, we crave to be seen and heard. Right. And so if I was working with, a client who was in that place, which many of my clients are in that place, they flow in and out of being in that place and being in a more accepting place. I want them to feel seen and heard. Right. And so some of my work around this is getting people to be able to say to themselves, okay, I see you grief. Like I see you anger. And then my next question is, where do you feel grief in your body? Where do you feel the anger in your body, right? Can we put a hand on it and just breathe with it for a minute? We don't need to, take it away in this moment. Like it has a reason for being there. And then, oh, good. I'm glad. and then as, there's something that happens in that moment when we can be with it. And that I think is yoga too, right? Like just holding the moment for all that it is. We might not like it, but can we be with it? And I think that's also a key element that our yoga practice can offer, right? There's this concept called santosha, which is contentment. That doesn't mean we like it, but it's not comparing to the past, not comparing to the future. It's being here now and holding all that the moment has.
I like that. We use that idea again from a therapeutic model. We do that idea like holding space, right? That I'm not trying to change it. I'm not trying to make it better or create new language around it. It's just holding space. So what I'm hearing you describe is that in that moment, if I am alone and I am choosing to move to do a yoga pose in order to kind of try to center myself or ground me, or just finding that quiet because my life feels very chaotic in the moment post failed cycle, right? Yeah. So I've gone through a hard week. I get the phone call from the doctor and it was not successful. And I kind of knew it in my head and heart. So if I can find the quiet on a yoga mat, on a couch or whatever, and really being present, I love how you put your hand on your heart, because one of the other things that does is it helps me also consider the concept of self-compassion, right? Of of being kind to myself in those moments. It's not, I only have to be positive about myself, but I also have to be compassionate to myself. So if I can sit in that quiet and I can say, my grief is right here. My heart is actually hurting. I can feel the pain right here with me. And just sit with your hand on your heart. Say, I'm feeling my heart breaking. I feel the pain of my heart. I feel the pain that my whole body is experiencing on a very physical level. I feel it here. And to sit with it and touch it, right? To literally be physical and present with it and breathing with it. But if I can sit and breathe in it and be present with it, I might be able to the next step find a space to be compassionate to this person who's hurting.
That's exactly right.
And that really is about reconnecting me to my body in a safe and compassionate way.
Absolutely. And just the connection of your hand on yourself. I mean, this counts.
Yeah.
This counts. And I'll often, guide people to, I'll say, like, find the ground, because when we're spinning up here, we've lost our connection with the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So find the ground, like find your feet, if you want to sit with your back against a chair or a wall, but like get yourself grounded, literally, like bring yourself into safety and support through the structures of a wall or a chair or the floor or whatever, so that you feel held, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's so much effort in holding ourselves when we're in pain. Mm-hmm. And see it. And then, like you said, that opens the door to then maybe be able to take the next step, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. which might be, like you said, that compassion, and once we enter the kindness and compassion narratives, we've changed the relationship with our grief.
Most definitely. And our bodies in general.
And absolutely, our bodies. And so I think as much kindness and compassion that we can send to our bodies through our hands, because sometimes words just, they're not there, but through our hands and our breath.
Right.
Just taking a pause and just, I see you, I feel you, I know you're here, I know you're hurting, but I'm capable of this right now in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like that also because sometimes I think what I'm hearing from so many women is a feeling of deep isolation, right? Yeah. They don't feel that they have somebody all the time that they can connect to and talk to and run it through, whether they have a therapist or not, and I would encourage people to find the therapeutic support as well when you're in struggle. There's no wisdom in doing this alone, but that ability to sit with even yourself in that pain, without it feeling so overwhelming to you, and again, sometimes that overwhelm comes from a space of, I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now. And that's where I think that the yoga component, that breathing, that touch, and that mindfulness practice allows you to be fully present with those feelings in a way that allows connection and kind of grounding that feels very safe.
Absolutely. And, I think we can call on the essence of poses to help connect us with what we need or what we want to cultivate or create. So, for example, the warrior poses mm-hmm. are so powerful and really connect with this sense of strength, right? Child's pose is very kind of more like comforting and closed in and,
right.
Holding yourself, right? The balancing poses kind of teach us, how do we breathe through challenging moments? Like, how do we breathe through the wobbles? Like, how do we not judge ourselves for wobbling, because it's not about that anyway, right? Like, there's just all of these ways that, if you have a practice or you're getting into it, you can start noticing, like, what poses spark a little something in you? Like, what poses do you connect with in some way?
Right.
Because they're probably they probably have something for you there. There's something for you to find about yourself there.
Right. And what I also like is when there is a teacher involved. What I love about that is, like, sometimes the teacher will say something that really resonates deeply on some level. So like the instructor who will say something like, so if you fall out, you come back in. Catch your breath and come back in. Find your breath and then come back in. So that idea of, like, okay, sometimes you need to step away, you need to fall out, and then you come back in, because that is really what we're talking about, is that ability to come back to it, to come back to the treatment, to come back to the struggle, to come back to the connection to our bodies is such a, to me, that's a very healthy way to live, no matter what we're dealing with in life. Be able to come back to, we fall out, but we come back in. We acknowledge Absolutely. Where we are today, and also where we find our strength, but being fully present with the grief just as much as we are with the strength.
Absolutely. And the breath is everything.
Yeah.
Right. So our breath is the bridge between our mind and our body.
Right.
So if you think about when you're tense in your body, right, your inner narrative is probably it's spinning, it's probably really negative, it's probably really harsh, and you're not breathing.
Right.
Right? Or vice versa. When your head's up here, but when we can get the breath in there, now the nervous system responds and is like, okay, the tiger is not coming. I can let my shoulders down.
Right.
Oh, I can get some space between my thoughts.
Right.
Okay. Oh, right. Compassion. I need to get toward compassion.
Exactly. Yeah. I once heard a study that described that we can actually help prevent panic attacks, like actual panic attacks, if we can get 3 deep oxygenated breaths into somebody who's beginning to panic. If we can teach them to do that breathing, that 3 deep oxygenated breaths can actually help to prevent a significant portion of panic attacks. So there's clearly something with the oxygen. And it is amazing if you begin to just pay attention to the amount of times that we don't breathe. It's really astounding. I'm like, oh, right, I have to remember to breathe in that moment.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It's all about the nervous system.
Right.
The nervous system is always, it's always on guard. And if we're not breathing, then it thinks the tiger's coming.
Right. I love this conversation with you. I'm so grateful for our time together. Any last words that you want to make sure to say or talk about?
I just want to thank you for your work. I'm so inspired. I'm really I love knowing that you're in the world doing this. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. For all of you that are watching, make sure that if we can help you, support you, Yesh Tikva has ongoing support groups that are virtual. We have we have an upcoming training relating to ambassadors out into the world, and so that our communities could have additional resources relating to infertility sensitivity. But no matter what, reach out to us and hopefully we can connect to great resources. So thank you everybody for being here and have a wonderful day.